So, you've been drafted. Congratulations. It's somewhere around 1200 BC. The world is one bad harvest away from falling apart, and a scruffy chieftain from a goat-covered rock called Ithaca just picked you to pull an oar on one of his 12 black ships. His name is Odysseus. You've heard he's clever. You will come to learn that clever is the word people use for a man whose plans get everyone around him killed. 12 ships leave Troy. You are on one of them. Here's your future, free of charge. The odds you ever see your mother again are not great, and I mean genuinely, statistically, historically, not great. So let's walk through the next few years of your life, assuming, generously, that you get a few years. You're not a slave. First, let's kill the worst myth you've absorbed from the movies. You are not chained to a bench. Nobody is standing over you with a whip while a fat man bangs a drum. That whole image, the sweaty rows of shackled prisoners rowing until they die, is real, but it's from the 16th century AD, roughly 3,000 years too late for you. Put it out of your head. You're a free man. In Homer's world, you'd be called one of the heteroi, the companions, and that word matters. You signed up with Odysseus because he's your basileus, your chief, and following him is supposed to make you rich. Rowing is skilled work. Fumble a stroke on a 50-oar ship and you can foul the whole bank of oars, snap a shaft, or roll the boat. You cannot force a terrified stranger to do that well, which is exactly why nobody tried. The men on this ship are volunteers, warriors, and shareholders all at once. When you raid a town, you get a cut. That cut is your entire compensation package. There is no salary, no coins, no payday. Cash wages for rowers won't be invented for another 700 years. In a city called Athens, that doesn't exist yet, you row for plunder, glory, and the man next to you. Your status is a strange thing to modern ears. You're not rich, but you're not property. You own your own weapons. You have a name and a family back on some island. And if this voyage goes well, you might come home with a slave of your own. A bronze cauldron, a stack of cloth, maybe cattle. A rower in this world is a man with a stake in the outcome, which is precisely why he rows like his future depends on it. It does. The palace counted you. Before you ever board, somebody wrote your name down. This isn't a guess. In the ruins of the palace at Pylos, burned to the ground right around 1200 BC, archaeologists found little clay tablets covered in a script called Linear B, and some of them are, no exaggeration, rowing rosters. One word keeps appearing, ta, which becomes the Greek word, eritai, rowers. One tablet lists somewhere north of 500 rowers by their hometowns. Another sends exactly 30 men off to a place called Pleuron. Another tracks who showed up and who conveniently didn't. So the romantic image of a wild band of free spirits needs one correction. The palace kept accounts. When a king needed a fleet, he levied crews the way a modern state runs a draft, town by town, quota by quota, and a scribe pressed the numbers into wet clay. Some of the very last tablets at Pylos are about posting watchers along the coast. Men sent to guard the shoreline against something coming from the sea. Historians argue about what exactly that something was, but the clay is real, the fear in it is real, and it means you, the rower, were important enough for a dying kingdom to count you in its final days. The black ship. Your workplace is a marvel and a death trap. It's called a pentakontoros, a pentakonter, which just means 50 oarer, 25 men aside, a long low hull, maybe 90 feet from tip to tail, narrow, light, and fast enough to hit 9 knots with a good wind and desperate arms. Homer calls these vessels black ships over and over, and there's a boring, brilliant reason. The hull is smeared with pine, pitch, and resin to keep the water out, which stains the whole thing tar black. Your ship is black because your ship is waterproofed. Poetry, meet home maintenance. Here's the part that impresses shipwrights 3,000 years later. The hull is built shell first, outside in, which is backwards from how you'd guess. The planks go on first, edge to edge, joined by hundreds of little wooden tenons slotted into carved mortises and locked with pegs. Only after the skin is finished do the builders slide in the ribs to stiffen it. Fir and pine for lightness, oak where it needs muscle. It's essentially a giant wooden puzzle held together by joinery, no nails, and it works so well that a real shipwreck off Turkey still shows the exact same technique. One thing your ship does not have, a ram. That bronze beak on the bow you're imagining won't be invented for centuries. You don't sink enemies by ramming them. You pull alongside, and then it gets personal. The pentakonter is the big one, the 50-oared warship. But your world has smaller cousins too. There's the triakonter, 30 oars, and the humble akasoros, the 20-oarer that does most of the ordinary hauling and trading up and down the coast. A young man usually earns his salt on one of the small boats before he's trusted on a raiding galley packed with 50 angry oarsmen, and when the tablets and the poems try to count the whole armada, the numbers go gloriously insane. Homer's catalog of ships allegedly lists over 1,100 vessels sailing for Troy, some crammed with 120 men each. Take that literally, and you get an army of well over 100,000. Nobody sane takes it literally. It's a poet flexing, And you should file the grander numbers under legend, not logistics. No bench is comfortable. Let's talk about your seat, because you'll be intimate with it. There isn't a below decks, there's no cabin, no hold, no dry corner to curl up in. Only the prow and the stern have any decking. The entire middle of the ship, where you live, is open to the sky, packed with benches, and that's it. Sun, spray, wind, rain, all of it lands on you directly, every single day. Under your bench you stuff everything you own: a leather sack of barley meal, a skin of wine, your spear, your shield, your sword. Because remember, the guy rowing is the guy fighting. When the wind's behind you, the mast goes up, that one big square sail catches it, and you get to rest your arms and feel briefly human. The second the wind dies or turns against you, the sail comes down, the mast comes down, and it's back to muscle. On a long haul you row in shifts and spell each other, because no human body pulls an oar for 12 hours straight. Your hands will blister, then callous, then crack from the salt. The sea is never flat enough, and yes, you will be seasick, and no, there is nowhere private to be seasick. Steering is done by 2 big oars off the stern, worked by the helmsman, one of the few jobs on board worse for your nerves than yours. What are you wearing through all this? Not much. A chiton, a simple tunic, with a heavy wool cloak called a clana thrown over it when the nights turn cold, or the rain comes sideways. When there's real rowing to be done, most men strip down to a loincloth and let the sea have the rest. Your rope is twisted plant fiber and oxhide thongs. Your anchor is a heavy pierced stone on a line, because iron flukes are a luxury you don't have. And there's one job on board nobody brags about, but everybody prays, gets done: bailing. The open hull ships water constantly, from spray, from rain, from the seams, and somebody is always scooping it back out with a wooden vessel. Because a boat slowly filling with water is a boat slowly becoming a coffin. One myth to bury here, gently. You've pictured a drummer or a piper hammering out the stroke while a rowing master screams the beat. That famous setup, the flute player and the calustas calling time, really existed, but it belongs to the sleek war galleys of Athens 7 centuries after you, ships juggling 170 rowers who genuinely needed a metronome. On your 50-oar boat, the rhythm is cruder and human. A lead rower, or the helmsman calls it, in and out, or the crew simply sings a work chant to keep 50 arms landing together. Your soundtrack is your own hoarse voices and the slap of the blades. The sea keeps no graves. There's a specific fear that lives in the back of your skull the whole time you're out here, and it isn't just dying. It's dying wrong. To a man of your world, drowning at sea is close to the worst possible end, because a body lost in the water gets no funeral, no fire, no proper burial. And without those rites, people believe, your soul can't settle. It doesn't cross over. It just drifts, unquiet, forever. Homer keeps returning to this dread. There's a moment where Odysseus, caught in a storm, actually says he'd rather have died at Troy with his friends around him, and a grave to his name than vanish nameless under the waves. Think about how bleak that is. A hero would prefer a spear in the chest on dry land to the anonymous, endless nothing of the sea. That's the quiet math running under every voyage you make. It isn't only your life on the line, it's whether anyone will ever be able to lay you to rest at all. Barley and watered wine. You will not eat well. You will barely eat interestingly. The menu at sea is built around one rule: nothing that goes bad and nothing that needs a fire. Because lighting a cooking fire on a pitch-soaked wooden boat is how you become a very warm memory. So you eat barley meal, the staff of life, hauled around in leather bags and eaten more or less as paste. Olives, olive oil, hard goat cheese that could double as a weapon, dried figs, salted fish, wine, always, but always cut with water, because a drunk crew on the open sea is a dead crew. There's a dish in the Odyssey that's just barley, honey, cheese, and wine mixed together, which sounds vile and was probably a treat. The real meals, the roasted meat and the actual cooking, happen ashore at night around a fire, not out here. And then there's water. Fresh water is your genuine tyrant. It spoils in the skins, it runs out fast, and it decides your entire route. You don't hug the coastline because you're timid. You hug it because if you can't find a spring or a river mouth in a couple of days, everyone on this beautiful black ship dies of thirst, slowly, in view of an ocean they can't drink. Running out of water is a recurring nightmare in these stories for a reason. It was a recurring nightmare in real life. This is also why nobody in their right mind crosses the open sea if they can avoid it. Given the choice between a long, boring crawl along the coastline and a quick dash straight across the water, the wise sailor picks boring every time. Boring means you can put in for water. Boring means a beach to run to when the sky turns black. The men who take the shortcut across open water are either desperate, in a hurry, or being punished by a god, and your captain, over the next 10 years, will manage to be all three. You sleep on sand. Here's a fact that reshapes your whole idea of an ancient voyage. You almost never sleep on the ship. At dusk, the crew rows for the nearest friendly beach, and and then everyone piles out and drags the entire galley stern first up onto the sand. The ship is light and shallow on purpose, built to be beached and relaunched every day. That's a defining rhythm of your entire life now, and it's the reason these ships can raid a coast and vanish by morning. On the sand, you finally get to be a person for a few hours. You build a fire, you roast whatever you've got or caught, you drink your watered wine, you sleep on the ground wrapped in your wool cloak, and you do it all over again when Homer's rosy-fingered dawn shows up. Then, at first light, you shove the ship back into the surf and go. The actual shape of a day barely changes, so learn it once. Dawn cracks over the water, and someone kicks you awake on the cold sand. You wolf down barley and a swallow of watered wine. Together, the whole crew heaves the black ship off the beach and back into the shallows. Everyone's soaked to the waist before the sun's even up. If the wind's kind, the mast goes up and you sit and watch the coast slide by. If it isn't, you row, and you keep rowing, eyes fixed on the next headland until the light starts to fade. Then you find a beach, haul out, light a fire, and collapse. That's your calendar. That's every day of the sailing season, until the day it very suddenly isn't. There's a season to all this, too. The good sailing window runs roughly from spring to autumn, tied to when the Pleiades are visible in the sky. Call it May through November. After that comes what later sailors nicknamed the closed sea, the winter months, when storms roll in and the clouds and fog blot out the coast and stars you steer by. Only a fool or a very desperate man sails in winter. In fairness, you signed on with Odysseus, so the very desperate category may apply to you sooner than you'd like. Finding your way. You have no compass. Nobody does. The magnetic compass is a couple thousand years and an entire continent away. So how do you not just wander the Mediterranean until you starve? You memorize the world. By day you navigate by the coast itself, by headlands and peaks and the shape of islands you've seen before. Old sailors carry entire coastlines in their heads. Every promontory a signpost. The whole preferred method is coast hugging and island hopping. Staying in sight of something solid. When you do have to cross open water, you wait for night and you read the sky. In the Odyssey, when Odysseus finally sails alone, he steers by keeping the Pleiades, the late-setting herdsman Boots, and the Great Bear, the constellation Homer calls the Wain, in view off to one side. That's not poetry. That's a genuine navigation manual smuggled into an adventure story. The stars are your instruments, the sun is your clock, and a cloudy week can get you very, very lost. And then there's the horror nobody warns you about on the recruitment beach. The flat calm. A storm can kill you fast, but at least it's dramatic. Being becalmed is worse in its own slow way. The wind just dies. The sail hangs limp. You row until your arms give out, and the coast never seems to get closer, and every hour the water skins get lighter and the sun gets meaner. Whole stretches of these stories turn on crews stuck windless, watching their supplies drain towards zero, doing the grim arithmetic of how many days of thirst they've got left. The sea doesn't need monsters to finish you. Sometimes it just needs to hold still. Trader or pirate. Now let's discuss your actual job, because sailor is doing a lot of polite work in that sentence. In your world, the same crew of men are merchants one week and raiders the next, and nobody finds this strange. When a stranger lands on a beach in these stories, the locals ask, more or less, so, are you traders, or are you pirates? And it's a normal question, not an accusation. A menu. You are, functionally, an armed gang with a boat, sailing to a coast, sacking a town, killing the men, taking the treasure and the people, and splitting the loot, is not a crime here. It's a business model. And Odysseus shows you exactly how it works about 5 minutes after leaving Troy. The fleet hits a city called Ismarus, home of the Cicones, who had the bad luck of siding with Troy. You storm it, you sack it, you divide the spoils on the beach. Odysseus, being the one clever man present, says grab it and go. You and the rest of the crew, being human, decide to stay and drink the excellent local wine and roast the excellent local sheep. Bad call. The Cicones fetch their tougher neighbors from inland, come back at dawn, and cut you to pieces. Odysseus loses about 6 men from every ship, 70-odd companions, dead, before you even reach anything mythological. The monsters haven't started yet, and you're already burying friends. One detail from that raid follows you the whole journey, though you don't know it yet. During the sack of Ismarus, Odysseus spares a priest named Marin, and in thanks, Marin hands over some jars of a wine so strong and so sweet you're supposed to cut it with 20 parts water. That wine goes into the ship's stores? Chapters later, it's the exact wine Odysseus uses to get the Cyclops blackout drunk before blinding him. So the plunder you helped haul off one beach becomes the weapon that saves your captain's life and, incidentally, curses the rest of yours. Raiding has consequences. They just take a while to arrive. Poseidon is watching. Out here, the sea is not weather. The sea is a god, and he is in a mood. His name is Poseidon, the earth shaker, the one who raises the storm and the only one who can flatten it again. Every wave is his permission. You do not sail without acknowledging that. So, before a voyage, you pour a libation, wine tipped into the sea, and you pray for safe passage. Before something big, you sacrifice, maybe an animal on the beach, the smoke going up to whoever's listening. You watch for omens, a bird's flight, a strange dream, a shift in the wind, and you read every one of them with total seriousness, because you've decided your life depends on it. Now, about your particular captain, the entire disaster you're about to live through happens because Odysseus blinds Poseidon's one-eyed son, the Cyclops, and then, in a burst of ego, shouts his own name across the water so the monster can tell his divine dad exactly who to curse. Poseidon spends the next 10 years drowning your friends as a personal favor to family. You will pay, in full, for one man's inability to leave a good exit line unspoken. The world is ending. Zoom out for a second, because the timing of your birth is spectacularly bad. Around 1200 BC, the entire eastern Mediterranean is coming apart at once. The great palace at Pylos burns. Mycenae, Tyrants, the whole Mycenaean world starts collapsing. The Hittite Empire falls. The rich trading city of Ugarit is wiped out. Even mighty Egypt is fighting for its life against seaborne raiders, the Egyptians called the Sea Peoples, whom Pharaoh Ramesses III finally beats back around 1177 BC. Historians used to blame those raiders for everything. Now they think it was a slow-motion pileup, drought, earthquakes, failed harvests, revolts, and a trade network that collapsed like dominoes. You are rowing through the sunset of an entire age. We know all this partly because the sea kept the receipts. Off the Turkish coast at a place called Uluburun, divers found a merchant ship from around 1300 BC, and its cargo is the Bronze Age in a box. 10 tons of copper ingots, a ton of tin, enough metal together to arm a small kingdom, blue glass ingots, ebony logs from Africa, elephant and hippo ivory, amber that traveled all the way from the Baltic, and a gold scarab stamped with the name of Queen Nefertiti. That single wreck proves your world was stitched together by ships like yours, run by mixed crews of many peoples, hauling wealth across a sea that swallowed plenty of them whole. Your bones could easily have joined that inventory. There's a second wreck too, at Cape Gelidonia, sunk around 1200 BC, right in your era. It was a small trader carrying copper ingots, along with scrap bronze and a smith's own tools. Basically a traveling metalworker in a boat, mending and making as he sailed the coast. And if you want to actually see the kind of vessel you crew, look at a wall painting from the island of Thera, buried under volcanic ash and preserved for us. A whole flotilla of ships gliding between two towns, oarsmen at their benches, sails rigged, dolphins leaping alongside. It's a few centuries older than you, and painted by a different people, but it's the closest thing to a photograph of your daily life that survives, a snapshot of the sea road you live and die on. None of you come home. Let's be honest about how this ends, since you'll want to update your expectations. Odysseus left Troy with 12 ships and something like 600 men. He arrives home at Ithaca with exactly 0 ships and 1 man, himself. Do the math on your survival. And it's not even quick. Between Troy and home, the ways to lose men are almost creative. On one island, the crew eats a strange lotus fruit and simply stops caring about ever going home, and Odysseus has to drag the weeping addicts back to the ship. A wind god named Aeolus gives you a literal bag of storm winds to speed you home, and the crew, convinced it's secret treasure, opens it in sight of Ithaca and blows the whole fleet right back out to sea. A sorceress named Circe turns a landing party into pigs. Every stop costs something. A man, a month, a mind. Here's the body count you're signing up for. The Cyclops eats 6 of you. The Laestrygonians, giants who hurl boulders down from the cliffs, smash 11 of the 12 ships in a single harbor and spear the men in the water. 11 crews, gone in an afternoon. The sea monster Scylla plucks 6 more men off the deck as you row past, 1 for each of her heads, screaming your names as she lifts you. And the survivors, the very last of you, get so hungry on the island of the sun god that you slaughter his sacred cattle despite being told, explicitly, not to. So Zeus waits until you're back at sea and drops a thunderbolt on the ship. Everyone drowns. Odysseus alone floats away clinging to the wreckage, and he's the only reason we know your name at all, which is to say we don't know your name at all. So that's the job. Free man, black ship, barley paste, a bench you'll hate, a captain who talks too much, and a god who never forgets. You sleep on sand, you steer by stars, you raid for a living, and the smart money says the sea keeps you. But for one long season, before the boulders and the monsters and the thunderbolt, you'll pull an oar into a sunrise nobody else will ever see, on a black ship on a wine-dark sea, at the exact moment the old world ends. Grab your oar, the wind's turning.